Well, we're joined now from Hong Kong by Tom Grundy, Editor-in-Chief and co-founder of the Hong Kong Free Press. Thank you for your time. China's preparing for a very carefully choreographed 70th anniversary celebrations of its National Day. Is it going to be upstaged and overshadowed now by the protests?
I'm sure Beijing would like all focus on the capital during its military parade tomorrow, but although celebrations here will be more low-key, that's probably not going to be the case for protesters. We've just heard that a ban on tomorrow's protests has been upheld, and if the scenes from yesterday are anything to go by, things could get hairy quite fast. Our full team was out yesterday. We saw police protester chases westwards, then eastwards on Hong Kong Island, dozens of arrests, tear gas, pepper spray, the use of water cannon. No ordinary water cannon either. This sprays tear spray and blue dye, rubber bullets, a live round even shot by an undercover officer. And on the protester side, we saw Molotov cocktails. We saw some vandalism and them setting fire to makeshift barricades as they were passing through. A lot of anti-government graffiti as well. So certainly protesters will be gathering tomorrow despite the ban. So this could be overshadowing the 70th anniversary celebrations Beijing has in mind.
These protests started off as against the extradition bill, which has now been withdrawn. They've sort of evolved now, haven't they, into demands for free elections, less interference from Beijing. Are the protesters likely to actually engineer the kind of political change that they're after?
Well, 17 weeks into these protests now, had that bill have been withdrawn much earlier, we probably wouldn't be seeing the escalations that we have now, because these demands have morphed and evolved into greater calls, as you say, for democracy, amnesty for arrested protesters, but in particular, a lot of anger towards the police. And that weekend by weekend has somewhat escalated, with the authorities refusing to conduct a fully independent investigation into police alleged misconduct. We have seen Carrie Lam, the chief executive, who's obviously very deeply unpopular, try to set up dialogues with the public through town hall meetings, but there doesn't seem to be any movement on these further demands. So, you know, these protests could be going on for weeks, if not months. After this big National Day flashpoint, we have local district elections coming up with some controversial legislation, such as a law that could criminalise mockery of the national anthem. So any of these flashpoints over the coming weeks up until Christmas and beyond could cause more protesters to come on the streets, even if it does calm down after National Day.
I mean, clearly you've been following this very closely. Just in your opinion, how do you see this ending? Because the protesters, as you mentioned, 17 weeks in, don't seem to show any signs of abating at all.
Yes, and I think there are just wider concerns over Beijing's encroachment that have just lasted for decades, a strong tradition of peaceful protest in Hong Kong that seems to be unraveling as the government doesn't seem to be budging and just cracking down further. Whether these town hall meetings and frustration over the violence will swing, you know, ordinary Hong Kongers against the movement is very difficult to tell, and anyone who knows how this is going to end is lying. It's very difficult, you know, each weekend to predict what's going to happen. Just tomorrow, looking at forums, there are plans to perhaps block the airports. There are human chains planned. Obviously, this big march that has been banned. So it's very unpredictable for us to even predict what's happening tomorrow, let alone how this is going to unravel in the weeks to come.
Well, thank you for your insight, Tom Grundy. Really appreciate it. Editor-in-Chief of the Hong Kong Free Press.